Hello everybody, how are you doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel. And today I do want to continue the discussion a little bit from our last video. If you remember, in our last video, we talked about Microsoft confirming that they are having some kind of a presentation for the week of E3. It obviously is not labeled as an E3 show because tragically we don't have E3 happening this year, but they are stepping up in that same second week of June where we normally see E3 presentations to actually give us a show. And so in that video, I got to kind of talk about the excitement about that being announced, what kind of things we could see, the things that I'm looking forward to, and also how it opens up the door for maybe other companies, such as Nintendo, for example, to step up and also do the same thing and follow suit and announce some kind of presentation that would take place in that typical second week of June, which again is when we normally see E3 actually happen. And the quick recap of that video is that I discussed why I felt it was almost a guarantee that Nintendo will end up giving us some kind of June Direct or a Summer Direct, something that is a Nintendo Direct filling the void of what we would normally expect to see for E3. Just because the ESA isn't putting on an E3 show, whether it's in person or digital, why would a lot of these companies that normally have a lot of stuff to share during the summer not still want to get that information out there? I think that's why Xbox and Bethesda is doing their show, and it's why I absolutely believe Nintendo will also be doing the same and giving us a summer or June Nintendo Direct. And in that video, when I talked about what would probably happen with Nintendo announcing a Nintendo Direct, hopefully we do see that, I mentioned that in a later video, I might want to talk about an actual kind of predictions for the overall Nintendo Direct, because of course, it's always fun to make videos about predicting what could happen in a Nintendo Direct. However, what I'm doing today I think is less about predicting the actual show, and I want to instead dial in and more focus on what I think their actual big new game announcement would probably be for this big summer Nintendo Direct. Essentially, this concept just boils down to the fact that I tend to think that in almost every Nintendo Direct, and especially, if anything, with their E3 Directs, we always get some kind of new game announcement, right? I mean, that's why every time a Nintendo Direct is announced, we all get excited about what the big new game is going to be that's going to be announced that maybe we didn't previously know about. Even if we could speculate about Splatoon 3, for example, for years and years, it's not ever officially real until Nintendo tells us about it, and usually that stuff happens in a Nintendo Direct. So even if we're predicting it, it's still new at the time Nintendo confirms it. And it's like, if we expect Nintendo to give us a big Direct for summer, maybe during that same E3 week, that Wednesday or Thursday, let's say, why wouldn't we also expect them, beyond showing us more information about Breath of the Wild 2, maybe they give us a new trailer for Bayonetta 3, they would talk about Xenoblade 3, or whatever else that might be happening, Splatoon 3, right? All these games we know about. Beyond that, they're going to announce something new, something we don't actually know about. And I myself have a couple of big ideas about what we would probably see that big main game, that headline-grabbing announcement would actually be from this, theorized E3 Summer Nintendo Direct. So I want to go through some of these and discuss them as we go with you guys, because I think that would be fun and it gets us all very excited. There are no real surprises here. I'm not trying to pull a surprise magic game out of my hat and be like, wow, I didn't think about that. Thanks, Rob. You totally surprised me with that. It's not about surprises. It's more about just kind of giving myself a couple of minutes to chat about some of these exciting possibilities with you guys. So let's talk about some of these big options that might be Nintendo's big game announcement during their Summer Direct. So the first one I want to talk about is Pikmin 4. I kind of want to just get this one out of the way. And if you've been following me for a couple of years now, you know that I've actually been predicting and expecting Pikmin 4 for a couple of years. I think 2020 or maybe even 2019 was maybe the first time I actually thought we would see Pikmin 4 announced. I actually think it was maybe 2020. And ever since then, I've kind of joked about the fact that it's kind of ridiculous to keep predicting this game when it clearly isn't showing up. But I've also joked about the fact that I'm just going to throw caution to the wind and keep expecting and hoping to see this game, partly because it's fun and funny, and also partly because I'm being serious with you guys that I do believe the game is real and being worked on, or it's been close to finish for a while. and maybe their plans with that game has changed behind the scenes. Who even knows? But I'm definitely, while I'm having fun predicting it every time a direct is going to come up, I'm also not like lying to you guys. I do sincerely think that game does exist. Why it's been a mystery for like going on 7 years now, I don't know. But I do think the game is real, and when Miyamoto had those famous quotes in 2015, I think it was a real game that they were making for the Wii U at the time. And they even since confirmed that Hey Pikmin on the 3DS was not that game. Nintendo confirmed it. So he was clearly talking about some other console Pikmin game that's probably going to be called Pikmin 4. So this really just brings me back to the same prediction and the same option, I should say, that I give every time I predict a big possible new announcement at any Nintendo Direct. Again, especially an E3 Direct, where we usually expect the biggest surprise. And yeah, I'm just gonna say Pikmin 4 is on the table again, right? I mean, I guess I can admit that the longer we go, the less sure about it I do feel. So maybe it's not the game that has the best chance at showing up like I would have thought maybe 2 years ago. But I still think it's an option. Pikmin's an amazing series, and, you know, with the Switch probably coming into its twilight years, you know, in the next 2 years or so, we probably expect to see the next console. Why wouldn't Pikmin 4 finally have its opportunity to show up on the Switch? I really just think that it could happen, so yeah, that's one of those games that I would love to see be the big surprise. Okay, so let's move on to Zelda for a minute, because I think that there's a couple of things we could talk about when it comes to Zelda. The first is obviously Breath of the Wild 2. It was slated to come out this year. Recently, Nintendo pushed it to next year, 2023, which is sad, but also not very surprising. And so if they give us a big E3 summer type of direct, I think it's a fair bet that we might get some form of new trailer. It might even be the time that they decide to give us some significant details, mainly being a title and mainly being some real solid open gameplay. Really dive in to what, you know, maybe the basic surface level details of what the gameplay is going to be like and what the conceit of the story will be, why we're seeing chunks of Hyrule floating in the sky. You know, they don't have to go too deep about that stuff. They can obviously save that for later, closer to the game's reveal, but I think that just the basic details they can still get out to us, and it's going to feel really significant if they do that. So, obviously the chance exists that they're going to spend some time on Breath of the Wild 2. I would almost call that a guarantee. But we also wonder, what about a different Zelda game? What about something to release in 2022 so that Nintendo continues to stick to their sort of annual Zelda plan that they've been on in pretty much the entire Switch era? And so we come back to the time-tested conversation about the Wind Waker HD getting a port, or Twilight Princess HD getting a port, or maybe both of them coming together in a bundle. And, I mean, I certainly think it's possible. You know, I don't know why anyone would think it's not an option on the table. Does that become, like, their big headline-grabbing announcement from their E3 Direct, or their Summer Direct, I should say? I mean, yes and no. I don't think it's going to feel like the biggest thing, because they're games we've played already on multiple consoles. But at the same time, yes, it's going to make some kind of news, especially if it comes alongside of some kind of information or update about Breath of the Wild 2. And so, I mean, look, Wind Waker is my favorite Zelda game of all time. I loved it on the GameCube, I loved it on the Wii U, and yes, I would love to play it again on the Switch. And that includes Twilight Princess, which I also think is a really great game. So, whatever they would decide to do there, it would be nice to see. Maybe they surprise us with some other Zelda game, like a different remake that wasn't the Link's Awakening remake, you know, something that's like that but new. Anything, I guess, is possible, but I really feel like Zelda is almost for sure going to have some kind of big headline announcement at their show. Okay, so let's sandwich the Big Daddy right in the middle of this conversation. Let's talk a little bit about Metroid. Are we going to see or hear from Metroid at their big Summer Direct? Again, if they have it, even though we all expect it, we don't know it yet, so we're all just kind of having fun speculating, but we think they're going to have a direct. If they have it, are they going to talk about Metroid? And I think there's a great chance. I put this at like an 80% chance of seeing Metroid in some way, shape, or form at their show. Are we going to get more significant DLC for Metroid Dread? Probably not. I feel like the kind of pseudo update free thing that they did recently is probably all we're going to get for Metroid Dread. And that's fine. And so the other things we come back to are anything about Metroid Prime 4. God in heaven, please show us this freaking game. Or something about a Metroid Prime trilogy or the rumored Metroid Prime remake, right? Some kind of newer, updated re-release of an older game, probably Metroid Prime. And so these are things that I think are possible. Like I said, I'm even going as high as 80% chance that Metroid shows up at the show. Now, Metroid Prime 4 showing us a teaser or a trailer or something that I think would be probably the biggest announcement they could do at the show. I mean, I do think it's possible, but I think it's on the lower end of the spectrum. I do think there's a chance we see Metroid Prime 4 at the end of the year for the game to release maybe sometime next year. But I still think that there's that tiny possibility, maybe like 25% we see Metroid Prime 4 as that game at E3. But more than that, I do think it might finally be the time we could see the Prime Trilogy or the Prime 1 remake, whichever one of those two turns out to be true. I think that this might actually be the time for Nintendo to do it. The first E3 following the insanely successful launch of Metroid Dread, their first new Metroid game in so very long. Why wouldn't they take the following E3 as a great opportunity to show us some kind of new Metroid release? Even if it is just a re-release of older games, the level of hype it would generate, especially after years of speculation, would be massive. It would be a massive bomb drop to show or confirm something like that in the Metroid world. And like I said, I think there's a great chance it could happen. Now let's talk about Mario Kart real quick, because before the Mario Kart DLC was announced earlier this year, I would have put a new Mario Kart game as fairly high on my list of games to be the big announcement at a Summer Direct here. Maybe as high as 60 to 75%, right? Not as high as Metroid, but still pretty high. Over 50%. I would have said Mario Kart 9 or the new Mario Kart, or I guess, again, it would be Mario Kart 10 because apparently Tour counts in that list. So whatever. The new Mario Kart game that I think also has a great chance of being a cross-gen release, by the way. That there would have been a chance that maybe it would have been announced and confirmed, for some time next year, which would allow for a later announcement that it could be cross-gen. I would have put it pretty high on this list. But with the announcement of the DLC courses, and those are lasting through the end of next year, I think a new Mario Kart game, while I do think it's being made and maybe has a slight chance at showing up at the Summer Direct, I don't really think it's as high as I would have said before. And so I'm more talking about this game to say that before the DLC was announced, I would have put it pretty high. Now that the DLC has been announced, I think that any potential chance at them announcing this new Mario Kart game, I think has been delayed by quite a while. So this would probably be something that they would announce maybe like at next year's E3 or Summer Direct or whatever they do, right? I don't know if this is quite yet the time. I'd love to be wrong. I think we'd all love to see a new Mario Kart game announced, and I don't think that it would take away from anyone's hype or decision to buy or play the DLC, right? I think they would almost work together. So the one thing that works in its favor is that announcing the new Mario Kart game at the same time that they're constantly releasing new games for Mario Kart 8 or new courses for Mario Kart 8, I don't think that they hurt each other, because I bet some people out there would tell you that they would hurt each other, and I think the opposite is true. I think that they would actually aid each other in hyping up Mario Kart just in general. So that's just kind of, that's really neither here or there, because ultimately I still just think there's less of a chance of seeing Mario Kart show up as a new game. Now, a conversation that I think we haven't seen enough people talk about for a while is not Mario Kart, but Mario. You guys, they're making a new Mario game. We know they're making the game that is following up Mario Odyssey. Is it going to be called Odyssey 2? Maybe, maybe not. But whether it's Odyssey 2 or just some other completely wholly new idea, the next big, massive 3D Mario experience is being worked on. Is it ideal to be a next-gen game as opposed to a Switch game? Probably. But is there a chance it comes out on Switch? Yeah, I do think that there's a good chance that it comes out on Switch. So why wouldn't finally confirming the next Mario game be one of their big things they want to drop at their E3 Summer Direct kind of show? I think that there's a chance. I think it's maybe lower on the list of a lot of these games I'm talking about, but I think it would be smart of all of us to keep a new Mario game in the back of our brains as a possibility to show up, Of course, it comes down to when would the game release? Is it releasing this year or next year or 2024? Would Nintendo want to reveal it closer to the release, or would they want to save some time? It's really hard to predict on that kind of situation, but I just think a new Mario game, man, it could be announced. We know that they're working on it. Mario Odyssey isn't my favorite game in the world, but I would love to see a sequel because I think that they would only improve it. And I think that, similar to Mario Galaxy, I think Mario Odyssey is kind of designed in such a way that a sequel, a direct sequel, makes so much sense. Give us new kingdoms, give us bigger kingdoms. I would like to see them refine the moon finding sort of technique of it all. You know, maybe even refine the Cappy mechanic a little bit, or even change up the Cappy mechanic to something else. Who knows? I mean, the sky's the limit when it comes to Mario. They're always so creative with every new game, so yeah, I don't know. Maybe I put this as a 50-50, but I still think there's a chance, you know, hey, maybe they show us the brand new Mario game. And the last thing I want to talk about is a little bit more on the unique side, and I want to revisit this recent discussion going out about Bandai Namco potentially working on some kind of remaster or old Nintendo franchise, right? It's a very exciting prospect. There were job postings for something that hinted at it being an HD game. It's a remaster. It's a Nintendo contract, so it's probably a first-party Nintendo franchise. And so why wouldn't that be something that could show up? I mean, what's tricky about that is we don't know how close to reveal and release that theoretical game could be. There's a great chance that it's way too far off to show up at this, you know, theoretical E3 Direct, Summer Direct. But I also don't think it's impossible. Maybe they're just doing some late in the game hirings, but the game could still be close enough to announcing. And so then we start to revisit things that game could be, right? Star Fox was a big one we've all talked about. I personally threw out Metroid Samus Returns, which means maybe we could sort of kill two birds with one stone here if it was a Metroid game. Maybe it's reviving a Punch-Out game. Maybe it's reviving Donkey Kong. Maybe that's how Donkey Kong makes it into E3 or their Summer Direct. Maybe that's how Donkey Kong comes back, is remastering Donkey Kong 64 or one of the older Donkey Kong Country games. Or even just a new Donkey Kong game. Why not? I mean, that was in the rumor mill last year too, right? So why couldn't that be one of those franchises that shows up at the Summer Direct? Kid Icarus, for example, another big one everyone's talked about. I mean, if there's any truth to this Bandai thing, and if it is a remaster of an older game, or if someone is just making another game in an old franchise, why couldn't Donkey Kong, Star Fox, or Kid Icarus, or Punch-Out, or whatever the case, or Metroid Samus Returns, right, actually show up at this Direct as potentially the big headline-grabbing new game announcement? I kind of feel like this Bandai game is farther off, you know, too far off to show up at this Direct, but because I don't think it's impossible, and it's a fun mystery to explore and discuss, I wanted to throw it on the table here as an option that maybe we see what Bandai's game is. And so, all in all, these are just some of the bigger ideas that I thought about because, you know, bringing this back to the core concept, the core thesis statement of this video to wrap it up, if we're getting a big Summer Direct to take the place of the E3 show, why wouldn't they have at least one huge, massive, megaton bomb drop of an announcement ready to go? And that's where things like a Metroid game, a Zelda game, a Mario game, a Pikmin game, this Bandai remaster of a Star Fox or whatever, something like that is the kind of thing you announce to grab all the headlines, like I've said, right? That's the thing that really steals the show. And they love to give us at least one new game announcement, especially at E3, you guys. Even though it's not going to be called an E3 Direct, this is their time to fill the void of E3. So their biggest announcement for the year would probably show up at this theoretical Direct. So this was just an excuse for me to talk about some of their biggest franchises and the chances of it showing up at this Direct. A lot of fun for me to talk about. What do you guys think? What do you think about my theories? What are your own theories and predictions? And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of 2 Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video. Bye-bye.